Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. I just watched Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and I have to say, this film is good. And I mean really good.
Oh man, I feel like, wow, it's like I come over, it's like I don't know what to expect, I gotta be honest.
There's something about this movie that just feels fresh. It feels dedicated to its characters. I know I've seen this kind of story hundreds of times, but having a character that's not as popular of a superhero by comparison go on a Thor Ragnarok sort of quest was a direction that I didn't think they'd take Strange in. It really works though, and I'm not even a huge Doc Strange guy, but this film caught me off guard. This might be the best MCU project since Endgame. So Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness focuses on Wanda Maximoff attempting to find a reality in which to raise the kids she created in Westview. She does this by trying to take the power of this girl, America Chavez, who can travel through the multiverse. She looks for a universe in which she can hijack a version of herself and take that version's place. And during an attempt to get Chavez, Strange intervenes and saves her, but the pair accidentally get transported to another universe and they have to figure out a way to get back and stop Wanda. As far as plot is concerned, this film isn't complicated. It's easy to get overly complicated with something as hypothetical as the multiverse. Typically when the multiverse gets added to the equation, it's fairly easy for it to be the fallback for any problem that may arise. Not saying that the MCU intends to do that, but it's possible. Then again, logically, where else do you go after Endgame, which had the scope and the scale of the entire universe? To go bigger than that, we have to go further than this universe. Nevertheless, I thought that this film would be a jumbled mess, but it wasn't. I'm glad they didn't go down that rabbit hole and hit us with so many confusing alternate realities. Granted, we got a glimpse of the multiverse in the first Doc Strange film and in No Way Home, and while it's certainly front and center here, it's only partially explored. It wasn't overwhelming, it wasn't too much in our face, and that was the right call in my opinion. I don't think the multiverse effects were as impressive as they should have been, but it was fine. It worked like it does in other things like Rick and Morty and shit. The role that the multiverse plays in this film is really a means for Wanda to find her kid. It's not the center of attention here. The film ends with Strange having to go back into the multiverse, so they're 100% going to explore it deeper in the future, but this film merely introduces it. Now let's talk about
Sam, I won't be spoken to in that manner.
You talking back to me?
Gotta remember that along with Nolan, Raimi essentially pioneered these kinds of movies by making comic book icons iconic for their character and heart and not necessarily for their strength or power. They gave the genre credibility, and in doing so it became a respected one. So it's great to see this guy in the director's chair of another superhero flick 14 years into this cinematic universe. Since his first film, Stephen Strange has mainly showed up in the MCU because he's the Sorcerer Supreme. Stephen Strange has never felt like Tony Stark or Steve Rogers, a charismatic leading man who we fell in love with the moment they showed up. Because of Raimi, Stephen Strange is the most heroic, interesting, and fun to watch as he's ever been. It's not that he hasn't done heroic things in the past, but it's almost as if he's ditched his arrogance for vigilance. He seems to genuinely care about Chavez. I think a big part in that is having Strange take the weight of the world off his shoulder. He's no longer the Sorcerer Supreme, and he's not fighting for the entire universe anymore. It's like he lost his ego when he stepped down from that position. The side characters are also the most interesting they've ever been, like Wong and Christine, the latter especially. She was utterly useless in the first film, but now has an actual reason to be here. Raimi uses this relationship to give the master of the mystic arts who's been duking it out with gods some much needed humanity. A different director might have sideswiped that subplot, but Raimi understands the potential that it holds. With all that being said, I think the reason why this film will undoubtedly rank in the upper echelon of Phase 4 is because Raimi strips away as much of the MCU isms as he could. We're not constantly being reminded this is taking place in the MCU. Besides the Illuminati, which we'll get to in a minute, other heroes aren't even really mentioned except for Spider-Man, but Raimi earned that one. Raimi knows that a ton of CGI will be necessary for a comic book movie about the multiverse, so he instills way more color so that the CGI and the green screens blend seamlessly. There aren't even that many quips either. When there are dramatic moments, Raimi lets the drama hit, instead of hitting you with a laugh in some misguided attempt to make the film as lighthearted as possible. It's not only the quips that are used sparingly. There's not much excess in this film at all. This film is an adventure, but it also has elements of horror. Despite this, there's only 2 or 3 jump scares, maybe. Instead of this lazy way of scaring the audience, Raimi brings the horror with the framing of a smaller Wanda amidst loads of destruction that she herself caused. or by having her tell Reed Richards that his children will no longer have a father while her eyes glow red. There is a final battle, and it is CGI heavy, but it has Strange sleepwalk in a dead version of himself, a now zombified version of himself, to save the day. I mean, that's just creative as fuck. I was all there for it. Besides Raimi trimming as much of the MCU out of this film as he could, he also gave us a great villain. Wanda isn't some terrorist doing bad things for a quote-unquote good cause. Wanda is villainous as fuck in this movie, and Raimi doesn't care. He doesn't try to have her character make a statement or fix society. She's being driven by her desire to get back what she lost, and the movie doesn't try to make her seem like anything else. Now, I love a good complex villain who's trying to do the right thing, but Raimi reminded me that sometimes it's okay for the villain to be an actual villain. In this respect, like Strange, this is the best Wanda has ever been. Wanda was technically the villain of WandaVision, but that project attempted to depict her as more the protagonist. Here she is the villain. I mean, she's a straight up menace. She's portrayed as one of the most powerful villains so far in the MCU with respect to her destructive powers, up there with Hela and Thanos. She attacks Carmitage and kills a bunch of sorcerers effortlessly. She slices a knockoff Peggy Carter / Steve Rogers in half with her own vibranium shield. She's covered in blood for almost the entire final fight, and she literally murders all of this other universe's Avengers one by one. Her character is frightening, something she just wasn't before. And while we're on that subject, as cool as it was to see John Krasinski as Reed Richards or Patrick Stewart again as Professor X, their inclusion in this film ultimately ended up meaning nothing. They feel extremely tacked on. In WandaVision, Evan Peters shows up only to be the butt of a boner joke, essentially. Same thing basically happens here. We get this dramatic reveal of the Illuminati, but then they get slaughtered by Wanda as quickly as they showed up. Kinda like in Deadpool 2. Their inclusion doesn't do much for this film, so it's either a setup for future movies or a lazy way to include the X-Men and Fantastic Four into Phase 4. I really hope they do bring in the Fantastic Four because they need a good revamping after that 2015 flop. If they don't do anything with them, then their inclusion here would really be an act of desperation on Feige's part. Check this one out if you're an MCU fan or superhero fan or just a Raimi fan. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment, subscribe to the channel. I'd be more than appreciative if you did. Have a great day. We'll see you all next week. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.